what I've learned in the academy is making me a better solopreneur, and therefore I'm getting more business. And then I think I am also able to land the business better too, because I'm better able to articulate how things work and make recommendations of how I think they should retain my services versus just being a little bit more loosey-goosey about it in sales calls.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Holly Rustick here with Grant Writing and Funding. I'm super excited. We have a guest on the podcast today that we'll be talking to is Alex Schuppert, and she is going to be all about talking about her experience in the Freelance Grant Writer Academy. Like we were talking in the green room, and you've almost secured $400,000 in grant awards since you've been a part of the Academy. You have some grants that are out there that are pending too that you mentioned. You're like, yeah, maybe another 100,000 coming out soon. And $28,290 in your grant writing business, right? So amazing. And I wanted to have you on the show to really talk about how the Academy has been a part of that journey for you this year and these amazing wins. And yeah, just so you can let other people know like where you were at when you came into the Academy as well, where you're at now and how you fell into grant writing. So welcome to the podcast, Alex. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Holly. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so excited. So I always love to start. I love to start with stories, right? Because we are like storytellers and we love stories as humans, right? So tell us what got you into grant writing. Like, tell us your story, because most people fell into it. Sometimes we hear the odd story of like, oh no, that's what I knew what I wanted to do, but not very often. Okay, so can you go ahead and tell us your story of how you fell into writing grants and all of the things?
Sure. Yep. I definitely sort of fell into it, maybe in a slightly different way than others. I worked in always worked in nonprofit my entire career. So that's going on close to 30 years now to age myself. Starting in college, I mean, I really got into it, young, knowing I wanted to do mission-driven work. So, originally thought I wanted to do sort of direct services, having to do with psychology, kind of did some entry level positions in that, very high burnout type jobs, as you can imagine. Decided I need something more sort of office work based. I think I went back to school for like a master's in between there. And at that point, I really fell in love with like research and evaluations. That's kind of where I started. And I got a job with a large child welfare agency in their like continuous quality improvement research and evaluation department. Did that for a while, felt like I hit a ceiling, went back to get my MBA in nonprofit management. So at this point, I knew I was dedicating
learning.
to
I got an MA here, then I got my MBA. Love it.
I did sort of have a tendency, like, I'm not quite sure what my next step is. I'm just going to get more educated.
Right.
So yeah, and it was the MBA program was really great, nonprofit focused. So I learned, it wasn't just your typical business courses. It was a lot of courses related to nonprofits. And I remember one of them was a development and grant writing course. And I thought I was going to ace that course. Like, I'm a good writer. This is going to be an easy course. And it was actually one I really kind of struggled with. Like, I didn't know at that time sort of how not formulaic, but how there's really a strategy to grant writing that I didn't quite understand. And, it's just one module in a larger course. So actually, like, grant writing didn't come naturally to me at that phase of my nonprofit development. Got then into director level positions, overseeing programs, a lot of like youth programs, early childhood education programs. So did that for about 10 years. There was a little bit of grant writing in there. When you're in those positions, you have to wear many hats. So every once in a while, like, we have this grant, we think it'd be a great fit. So actually grant writing became easier for me once I was sort of in those positions, because now I understood like what I really needed to speak to, because I'm doing the programs. And so that really informed my grant writing. And then I decided I wanted to get into nonprofit consulting. I didn't quite know what that looked like. Made a move to Colorado. I had been in Massachusetts all previous to that. And got a job with a nonprofit consulting firm, but they really focused on grant writing. That's where I really sort of full-fledged fell into grant writing, was because it was the type of nonprofit consulting that I can position that I could get. So it was a really, like I said, I was already a little bit successful in the few grants I had done, but it was such an amazing way to learn about grant writing was through a firm that specialized in it because it's a really good firm, and I really felt like I was learning from the best. So I really felt like I became an expert grant writer during my time there. So, but I was ready to move on. I always wanted to start my own business. So moved back to Massachusetts, and that felt like a good time to launch my own business, thinking I knew everything there was to know, not just about grant writing, but about the business of it, because I'd worked with a firm that was doing that. And what I came to realize was that the more I tried to launch my business, the more I learned that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew about the business side of things. And then I started really questioning things. There's the whole mindset issue really became an issue for me. Sort of wondering if this was something I could really do. And that's when I found your academy. I think I found the podcast first, actually.
Oh, nice.
Just
Oh,
sort
it's
of
like full
stumbled
circle
on it.
then.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
learned
love
about the
that.
academy. And I remember I reached out to you, and at that point I was really focused on sales and marketing and thinking that was my struggle. I'm like, do you have a lot on sales and marketing? And you do. And you shared
Yeah.
with me exactly what you do. But since I've been in the academy, I realized that's just the tip of the iceberg of really what's been the most helpful content for me. So that's sort of how I fell into grant writing, and then how in turn I fell into the academy.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love that you came in and thinking it was one thing that you needed and you've gotten that support, but then you said that actually hasn't been the most impactful. So, such a great journey, such a great journey too, right? And we'll get to that. So I want to kind of dig into that. But before we dig into that, I also just want to bring up when you're working for a firm. So it wasn't like you said, I'm going to go out and start my own business. It was still another job, but it was just in a different type of nonprofit support, right? So that nonprofit consultancy firm, it wasn't that you were going, I'm going to be a consultant. You were just this is a job, but it kind of still serving nonprofits in a different way instead of going to work directly for a nonprofit. So what was kind of your thinking in that? I'm going to go work for a consulting firm versus going to work for a nonprofit.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I think even then, I eventually knew I wanted to start my own business. So kind of becoming a consultant for a firm felt like the right next step on that, before trying to do it on my own. And also just sort of the idea of consulting more broadly, working for different missions. There's a lot that's really difficult. I mean, a lot about working at a nonprofit, especially I was working at a lot of smaller nonprofits where the infrastructure is somewhat limited, where you are wearing so many hats, and that just gets stressful. My big sort of joke was that, my average day was I'd be sitting in a strategic planning meeting, and I'd have to run out to go drive the van for the, drive the after school van. And just I was sort of sick of that kind of having to fight fires constantly while also trying to do my big picture work. And I kind of felt like consulting was kind of more where I could be using my brain more of the time, more of my day than I was when I was, just constantly putting out fires in smaller nonprofits. And so I think I set my sights on consulting largely for that reason. Just sort of the nature of the job is so different than working at nonprofits. Being able to work with different clients really appealed to me, different missions. I was ready to kind of broaden my horizons in that respect. So yeah, that's why I set my sights on a consulting job.
I love that because I don't know if you know, that's what I did too for a while. I had worked for a larger nonprofit grant writing consulting firm, and it was great. I learned so much. Did I learn how to run a business? No, because I wasn't doing it. I was still in a job just like you. I kind of thought, oh yeah, I got this figured out. No, I didn't, because I was still it was still a job. You might have a leg up than just working in a nonprofit because you are looking at it in a different way and maybe getting mentored in a different way and asking questions and seeing how things flow out in a different way. But I still absolutely was not running my own business then. Right.
Right.
So yeah. Like,
And I
that's
was
such
the director of operations. I left that part out. Like it wasn't purely a consulting role. It was like half consulting, half their director of operations. So I did
Mm,
get more insight into the operation, the business side of it than
nice.
if I was a purely in a grant writer role.
Yeah.
But just the big difference is it was a firm. And so the way
Yeah.
you run a firm and the economy of scale that you have there, and it's just different than when you're running your own independent consultancy. Like there are
Yeah.
things that you could sustain as a firm, you can't sustain as an independent consultant. So that was
Right.
a big part of my learning curve, I realized, coming into the
Yeah.
academy.
Did you almost think like, oh, I need these things? And like you realized as a solopreneur, like, no, I don't actually need these things. You know what I mean? Like, or that would be nice, but I don't really need it. And, was there any of that?
No, I mean, I yeah, it's sort of the opposite. I've like been trying to avoid sort of some infrastructure things just because you do have to pay for them. So
Mhm.
it wasn't so much thinking I needed the same level of infrastructure that they
Okay.
had. It was
Yeah.
more like just how my contracts looked and how I got paid and
Yeah.
things like that. That was really, you can sustain things differently as a firm than you can as a solopreneur.
Right, right. Absolutely. Oh, that's such a good learning experience though, right? And I think even people they sometimes subcontract for firms as well. And that's a little bit more like running your own business because you're
Mhm.
not actually an employee or a subcontractor, so that's set up a little differently. But yeah, it is different, right? And that's very interesting that you went through that. And I remember I went through that too and then like became more of a subcontractor for them transitioning out, right? And that was helpful, right? Then just to be like, oh yeah, I can like take this and then replicate some of it, which I couldn't really do because you said it's like as you mentioned, it's very different, a firm
Right.
and then running your own business as a solopreneur, or even if you have a small team, right? It's very different. So
Yeah.
as yeah, and as you navigated through that and you're like, okay, this is something I really, you have, and the other thing I want to mention too is you have a lot of education. You've got a master's degree, you've got an MBA, you have all of this coming from like almost positioning you to be more an executive in a corporation, like a nonprofit, right? Have you taken your education and been like, how can I apply some of this to my business? I imagine your MBA is helpful in that potentially, but I'm not sure, right? If it's set up more corporate or if it's set up more, in a different kind of structure. So can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah. Even before I knew what a unique industry concept was, I kind of feel like that was part of mine was leveraging my experience as
Yeah.
a nonprofit executive, and bringing that to my grant writing. And I really do talk about how I am able to bring that to my grant writing. I also mentioned that I started off with a research and evaluation focus. So I
Yeah.
talk a lot about how I bring that into my grant writing too. In fact, it's on my website that, part of my concept for my consultancy is that I can bring the expertise and especially the evaluation into the grant writing. Um, because a lot of time I found when I was consulting with the firm, it was one of the biggest struggles of a lot of our clients was that their evaluation outcomes processes and therefore how they're able to demonstrate what they do in grants was kind of weak. And
Yeah.
so I was able to do what a lot of my coworkers weren't and really work with my clients on strengthening their outcomes and evaluation. But also my job there was a grant writer, so I only had so much ability to do that when I
Mhm.
was working for the firm. So part of my unique industry concept is now that I have my own business is that I can do that as much as I want with my clients, and that's really one of my services is
Yeah.
sort of merging the grant writing with the evaluation or and all the other things too, like all the things having to do with infrastructure and organizational development and
Mhm.
staffing plans and things. Like I have expertise in all of that that I can bring into my grants consults.
I love that because evaluation is not that's not actually my strong suit in grant writing. It's not, right? Like in writing grants, like my strong suit in writing grants is creating like really great objectives, goals, really great problem statements, and then creating like, here's the project outflow and how to create a budget to support that. The evaluation part I can do, but it's just not like where, you know what I mean? Like that's not where my strength comes in. So I'm so glad. And for many grant writers, that's not where their strength comes in primarily. So I do feel like that is a very unique and competitive feature that you have as a skill to bring to your services, right? Because, and even as a standalone service, I've seen a lot of people have just doing evaluation portions of grant writing as well. Like it's because it's needed, or like post award, right? Kind of
Right.
evaluation. So
Yeah.
is that also what you're bringing as far as like, we can do these kind of looking at evaluation infrastructure, that's type of part of the grant and process as a standalone service or as a post award service?
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely
Mm.
something I can offer. And I do make the distinction that I don't do the level of evaluation where it's more sort of like a research type study.
Yes.
So, you know,
Yeah.
my niche is evaluation that they can integrate in-house, and
Yeah.
that, you know, that completely will meet the needs of grants and funders, but it's not necessarily that rigorous, you know,
Yes.
controlled study type evaluation. That if a nonprofit needs that, I do have other resources I refer them out to.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And just looking at, I mean, how nuanced all this is, as folks are listening, like just because you're a grant writer, like you can stand out uniquely and competitively amongst everyone, right? I mean, just because you are a grant writer and there's not so many out there, you might look online, there's a lot, Holly, not as many as nonprofits. Like we still need, you know? And the other thing is like your features and your service offerings is very different than somebody else who might be focused on creating like grant readiness for really small nonprofits, right? You know what I mean? So that's a very different offer. It's a very different it's a very different point of where they're at and their journey in grant writing as far as nonprofits. So I love that you've been able to identify that. So kudos to that. And I'm so happy too, because something a lot of people might be thinking is, well, I spent all this money and all this time in going to school, maybe to a 4-year degree program or a 2-year higher ed program or a 1-year like intensive like program, and I can't just drop it. Like I feel like it's wasted if I start a consultancy. Like that could be a thought, right? Like where, but I love how you're like, no, it's not wasted. Actually, I'm applying a lot of what I've learned and my skills. Like, do you really feel like, yeah, I went a different direction than maybe I started out when I applied to that program, but it's all good. Like it's all here. Like, how do you feel about that? 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm
I
interested.
never really questioned, you know, if it's a good use of my education and my
Yeah.
experience, because like I said, I did sort of fall into grant writing, but I quickly saw how applicable my experience was, and how, um, not to be braggy, but, you know, I quickly, you know, was recognized as one of the top grant writers at my firm, you know, by my
Love it.
boss. And,
Be
you know,
braggy.
whenever
I
we
love
had
it.
a
Yes.
client that needed extra work, she would assign it, or, you know, just needed more, and she would assign
Mhm.
it to me. Um, because I had that experience. So, you know,
Yeah.
absolutely, you can learn grant writing as a skill that's, you know, starting off earlier in your career and be a really great grant writer. But also, you know, the more you know about nonprofits, the more you can bring that
Yeah.
to your grant writing. And different nonprofits have different needs, right? Some maybe
Mhm.
don't need my level of expertise,
Yeah.
but others definitely do. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that because it's still, you're setting yourself up with a career path working for yourself that you're like, this is my direction now, right? And all of your experience has positioned you to be where you are now. So I love that so much, to say, yeah, this is all a part of the journey and doing that. And so let's kind of fast forward now into your own business and being in the academy. As you mentioned, you joined because you were thinking more about sales and marketing. I said, yeah, it's in there. And then you joined and you said, whoa, there's some other stuff in here too. And this has actually been more impactful. Can you talk about some of the things that have been impactful and how it's changed your business, since you already had one started, but you used the academy to help kind of catapult that?
Yeah, a few things. I think one is the mindset coaching is
Mm,
it's, I mean, you wouldn't even necessarily think that would be a part of, you know, an academy that's focused on grant writing and you know, building your business. And yet it's so essential. As I said, when I found the academy, sort of the reason it appealed to me, but not realizing it, was because I was struggling with my mindset, and I just felt like I needed something. I wasn't even sure what I needed. And I thought I needed help with sales and marketing. But I think what I realized was I almost needed more support around the mindset aspect of things. And just having a place to go when I was questioning, my business on a very meta level, or just very specific questions about how to deal with client issues or anything like that. For me, it always came down to mindset issues around whether it was like pricing. I mean, I've always been pretty confident in what I'm able to deliver in services, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily confident in sales, right? Like,
Right.
you can be confident. I thought you could be confident if you're confident in yourself, you could automatically be good at selling yourself, but that's not true because other mindset things come into that. Um, like what, but I know I'm have good value, but what if this person I'm talking to doesn't? And that's a big mindset issue. I know that we talk a lot about in the academy, is sort of helping guide your conversations that they understand your value.
Mhm.
So the mindset coaching is definitely one thing that I think I've used
Mhm.
maybe the most. And then the other is just like the really detail oriented aspects of the business. So help with contracts and pricing.
Mhm.
Um, like I just sort of know how the contracts looked at the firm that I was working with. But
Right.
as a solopreneur, like, I realized my contracts really needed to be, have a lot of different details than the types of like just around your schedule and your, putting in your hours and things like that. And what happens if, the client doesn't get you information. I think when I was talking before about the things a firm can sustain that a solopreneur can't,
Mhm.
it's those little details that I didn't
Mhm.
realize when I started my own business that I've learned through the academy. Like, you really need to think through all those little details of how to make things viable and sustainable as a solopreneur, and spell that all out in your contracts, spell that out in your policies. You have templates that really go into all of that
Mhm.
like I didn't even know existed, and it's been really helpful. And then the third thing is that's like pricing. You do have some modules on pricing and how you set up your contracts. And so that's the other thing, like retainers didn't even occur to me. Like, the firm I came
Ooh.
from did things more as like packages. And so I always thought of like grants are part of like packages, and how many grants you write is a different, like a 3 grant package would be priced differently than a 8 grant package. And it didn't even occur to me to offer my services on a retainer basis. So I always thought
Mhm.
it was a package or a project basis.
Yeah.
So just learning about how to, and I'm still working through the details of how retainers work in the
Yeah.
academy. I just posted something on the Slack today about a retainer question. So I think those are the areas where I've sought out and received the most support.
I love that. And I love that it's been so helpful. Like, I think too, like I've been interviewing people in the last few weeks that are in the academy to be on the podcast for our bonus episodes. And overall, everyone has said that mindset has been the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's hard because I could say that on the sales page, like, hey, y'all, you're coming in and you're doing mindset. And looking at it before you get in the program, you might be like, I don't even think I need that. Right. Like,
Yep,
it's hard to
exactly.
explain it. Yeah. Like,
It's why I found the academy, and yet I didn't know I needed it. It's like a maybe subconsciously I did, and that's what
yeah.
attracted me. But yeah, it's like, nice, that's there. But yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you guys are talking about it because it's really hard for me to talk about and explain how
Yeah.
vital it is and how much we actually do mindset coaching. And because people are like, I don't know, I'm good. But I'm like, yeah. But once you get into that first sales call with a client and then you automatically give a discount before they ask, what happened then?
Right. Yeah.
That was your mindset. Right. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so good. So I love that you went there first and that you've gotten a lot of support in that. And even the support, I know that you like to use the Slack channel. So also just bringing that up, like I love when I see your questions in Slack and able to respond to that and everything. So how has that been helpful just to be like, I got a question today. I want to answer pretty soon. I don't want to wait for the weekly call, like, or I might not be able to get on the call. Like, how has that been supportive for you?
Yeah, I think that's the other, benefit of the academy. It's not even a specific module, it's the community. Like when
Yeah.
you sign up for the academy, you have a community of peers. And when you're a solopreneur, that's something you're generally missing. And I really focused from the get-go starting my business and in joining networks and things. And it's been really important, but it's just definitely been sort of a next level of support and community with the academy and the Slack channel is really how you access that on a daily basis. I do try to attend the coaching calls too, and then that way you get to put a face to the names you're seeing in the Slack channel and other places. But yeah, sometimes you just can't make those coaching calls, and so it's nice that the Slack channel is always there. Yeah, and basically it just represents community to me, which is
I
really
love that.
important.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll reply on things, or Yvonne or one of our co-coaches, but also other people in the program. It is a place to interact. And if you have a certain question, like around, say like for around mindset, like, oh man, I don't know like why I'm not confident in this price. Like I feel confident and I feel, but why am I not, why am I thinking about discounts on sales calls? Other people in there will be like, oh, I went through the same thing, or I'm going through the same thing. Like, do you feel a lot of support just in the vulnerability that people are sharing in these very, very niche conversations, I would say, right? That's not a conversation you're going to have like with your partner or something that doesn't have a business, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's twofold. You get really great advice from the coaches, but then also, yeah, you might have a peer who like literally went through the same thing and just recently. And so it just brings like that extra level of just, authenticity around the advice and just the, well, if you just went through that and and came out of it the other end, like, so can I. Yeah, I think the vulnerability is an important aspect of that. It's just definitely a very safe space, and I think that's not something you necessarily have in other settings. Again, especially as a solopreneur, like you might have lots of friends and none of them do what you do, and so like where are you going to go for those types of conversations? So yeah, that's definitely a big part of it.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, and just talking about the pricing and understanding contracts and all of that. So I love that you were kind of coming just for like, give me strategy, give me, like the how to do this, right? But then when you came in, you said, oh my gosh, I see that I'm going to get the how to, but I'm also going to get the how to implement, right, around the mindset. So that sort of thing. But even just talking about that, do you feel like in your business now you're just more organized? Like how has that made you show up in your business? Is it like going to booking more sales calls just because you have that process sorted out, or how does that kind of show up?
Yeah, I think yeah, it's not even just the sales calls, it's what happens after the sales call. It's really about the implementing a contract. Like, I did have a couple of sort of problematic clients, partly because um I didn't really have a good understanding of what the scope of work should be. The clients a lot of time come to you with an idea of what they want and what they need.
Mhm.
And it was always sort of my MO to be like, okay, that's what I'll do for you. That just doesn't always work. And so I
Mhm.
think it's more the sort of explaining exactly how my services work,
Mhm.
and being really solid on that. And so that when I do enter into a contract with a client, it's, hopefully I've anticipated some of the issues that were coming up for me early on. Um,
Mhm.
just, yeah, in terms of like scope of work and expectations around how quickly I could turn around grants and things like
Mhm.
that.
So yeah, I love that too. Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing and what I've seen with you too is, as you mentioned, not just taking everything thrown at you and then having to figure out too where you had started with that, maybe where you are now, how to clean it up, and just how to like create more process where you come at it going, well, this is what I do though, because I
Right.
know who you are and I know what you really need. Right. So
Exactly. And this is
yeah,
how it works. Yeah. Like, and it
yeah,
doesn't work if we do it this way. It's only going to work if we do it this way. So,
I
yeah, having
love
the
that.
confidence to say that and then to create contracts that reflect that.
I love that. So yeah, and do you feel like now that you're joining, are you able to book more clients? Are you able to get out there more? Are you feeling more confident because you have those structures built?
Yeah. I think, I didn't even end up doing all of this. I like joined for the sales and marketing to-dos, and I didn't even end up doing all of that. My
Mhm.
dream has always been to get my business to a place where I don't have to do a lot of like
Yeah.
sales and marketing, that it is more sort of word of mouth and referrals. And so I'm already getting close to that, like already like referrals or inquiries are coming in that I'm like, how'd you even hear about me? So but I do think that goes back to what I've learned in the academy, and just the fact that I'm getting these referrals is because I'm providing a service that people are benefiting from and they understand, and that it's been a good situation for them. So then I get referrals. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's somewhat indirect where, that what I've learned in the academy is making me a better solopreneur, and
Mhm.
therefore I'm getting more business. And then I think I am also able to land the business better too, because I'm better able to articulate how things work and um, make recommendations of how I think they should retain my services
Yeah.
versus just being a little bit more loosey-goosey about it in sales calls.
Oh yeah, that's something we talk about a lot in the academy actually is there I swear it's like almost every other week because somebody's ready to renew a client. And the renewal questions come up a lot. So we have a whole renewal process too, right? So it's also like, hey, yep, a month out, this is what you should start doing before we renew. Should you check to raise your rates? Like all of the thing, like you got to book a call. This has got to be like a certain thing that you're actually expecting to do instead of just like waiting and then going, I don't know how to do this, right? They're at the end of their contract. What do I do? So yeah, I love that because you're getting a system that actually works, and because like you're creating your business is like more of having a process with even how you onboard and all of the things, right? So that's creating in itself its own marketing and sales. Like that's so cool.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people will know they're excited about your services. And that's the thing. Like I say, oh yeah, you could do like, I'll write 3 grants for you for $1,000 and turn that around all day long and sell that. But you're going to have those clients one and done because they're going to be like, she never really got me to where I needed to be. They are not going to be your best like referrals ever. And that's going to like fall apart real quick. And that's going to be a lot of marketing work that you're going to have to do just to churn. That's not what you're
Exactly.
looking for, right? That's what none of us are
Right.
looking for.
That's
Yeah,
also not sustainable as a solopreneur, because then you're spending more of your time on sales and marketing and less on the actual work, billable work. And so
exactly.
you just can't do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, we're not bro marketing at all. We are not about like creating a ton of ads and spending all this money and just trying to churn customers. We're actually trying to create impact, right, with our clients and and maybe you only need like in your business with you're looking at retainer models, like how many clients do you really need on retainer? Like maybe 3 to 5?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like 3 to 4. And then that allows you to, maybe still have a little extra time for those projects that do appeal to me. Like I do have one evaluation, who's just signed up for evaluation. And so I can do that because I make sure not to fill all my hours with retainer. The other thing is like, just because with grant ebb and flows, like
yeah,
you don't want to, it's impossible to book exactly 40 hours a week, because that means there's going
yeah,
to be some weeks where you're working 80 hours. So
yeah.
you just need to kind of like realize that some months are going to be busier and others will be less busy, but you want to make sure you're not booking yourself to the point where in those busy months you burn yourself out. So
That's
yeah, I
so
mean, like
good.
4 retainer clients is really about all I
Yeah.
could handle.
I love that tip though. Yeah, because you could say, okay, like ideally 5, but not really ideally, like monetarily wise,
Exactly.
but actually 4 is better because I know I'm going to have little one-off projects come up here and there, right? And I can take
Exactly.
those on. And then when it is heavy, I love that tip, Alex. That's so good. So good
Yeah.
to like give yourself some flexibility, right? In that. So yeah, and then you could do a push like, okay, I want to like maybe Q4, I want to hit 6 figures or I want to hit 150 or 200. Like, what's something I could do fun then, right? At the end of the quarter and like maybe do like a grant strategy for 2025 or for the next year and only sell 4 of those and charge X number amount, right? So I can like hit that like goal or whatever. Like, so there's so many different things you can do, but I like overall, like, let's keep it through the whole year when I know I'm going to have cash flow at this number that's comfortable for me, still bringing in the income. But yeah, I have room. I have room here and there. I love that. So good. Such a
And I
good
did
tip.
also want to, like, I always had a dream of starting my own consultancy because I did want that extra flexibility that brings. I do want to be able to set my own hours and everything. So yeah, I mean, of course, you're beholden to clients and grant deadlines, but still, it's just a different level of flexibility than you have in a job. So,
Yeah.
and that was always the dream. Going back to if I ever wondered if this would be my trajectory, like. No, that was part of what I always wanted to do. Like I never wanted to be an executive director. I always wanted to work for myself eventually,
I love
for all
that.
that brings with it.
Yeah. So like as I was going to school, as I was paying those student loans, like I'm still now where I wanted to be. And I love that. And how is that like for where you're at now? Like, what does that look like? Does it look like a weekly day, like kind of a glance at your week?
It does again come back to those ebbs and flows. So,
Mhm.
I did work a little bit last weekend. There happened to be a lot of grants that fell, but I did it from Vermont. I went up to
Yeah.
Vermont on Friday and then did a little work on Friday and Saturday. Um, but this week is a lot more calm. I don't have as many grant deadlines, so I'm going to make sure I take advantage of that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think, because of grant calendars and everything, you do get to sort of plan it out,
Mhm.
and sort of look at how your schedule looks. And then again, going back to sort of the contracts, I now have the confidence if a client says, there's this grant due in a week, if I want to take it on, I will, I can, if I can, I
Mhm.
will. If I don't, it's in my contract. I don't have to. And so,
Love that.
I think that's another thing that comes with what you learn in the academy is this sort of the logistics of it, but also the confidence to stand behind the logistics of,
Yes.
of the things you need to think about to make it a sustainable thing for you, like mentally, emotionally sustainable.
I love that. Yeah, because we offer policies. Like here's policies that will help you with those type of language and just understanding because we don't want you being doing grant turnarounds in a week all the time. Like, yeah, you said there's some space where you're like, sure, I that makes sense for me now, but we want you to rely back on your contracts and policies to be like, no. So we go through like, here's what we recommend, all of the things, right? With like lead time. And you can lean back on that. And like you said, though, the mindset work, though, is where you actually implement it. Because you can have all the policies in the world. We can give you the strategy. Here's exactly what to do. But if you don't remind clients when they send you that email that says, oh, here's this great grant. Can you get it done next week? I know it's due next week, but it's such a good fit. And then if you have that policy, but they forgot about it, it's there. Are you going to bring it up? Are you going to have the confidence to
Exactly.
say no?
Yeah. And 3 weeks ago when I was slammed, I did told a client, I'm sorry, no, it's due in 2 weeks and I can't. And then last week I actually needed a little extra like income and a couple of last minute grants came up. So I took them. And so
Love
yeah,
it.
I really enjoy that flexibility, but and also again having the backing to stand up for my policies when I need to.
Yeah, I love that so much. So, so good. So I'm so excited that you joined the Academy and that you came on the podcast today to share your journey. So where can folks find you out there? Because you are the owner and principal consultant of Lighthouse Nonprofit Consultancy. So where can they find you online?
Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a long name, but it's you could Google Lighthouse Nonprofit Consulting. The URL is www.lighthousenpconsulting.com.
Nice.
I'm also on LinkedIn. I think it's my full name on LinkedIn, Alexandra Shupert.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can find me in those spaces.
Awesome. And we will have all of the show notes, the links to all of that in the show notes. Yeah, and just where anything else you want to add for people who might be on the fence right now and in a similar situation as yours. Maybe they've been working, they went to school to work in nonprofits and they're realizing, you know what, I still want to work with nonprofits, but maybe not in a nonprofit. I am thinking about grant writing. Maybe it was a little bit harder than maybe they've written a few grants and they said, I didn't really fall into it naturally though. Like, what would be some of your recommendations for that?
Yeah, like I said, but when I was considering the academy, I did reach out to you. I had a very specific idea of what I thought I needed. I debated, thinking, oh, but can I afford that? Like my business isn't where I need it to be.
Mhm.
Can I afford the cost? I mean, obviously the ROI has completely been worth it. And so
Mhm.
no regrets. And signing up for the academy from a investment standpoint, it is definitely paid off. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's I haven't even utilized the grant writing
Mhm.
aspect, the grant writing support aspect of the academy as much because I did come with maybe more experience than some grant writers, but the combination of the grant writing support and just teaching you how to be an excellent grant writer combined with the business aspect, combined with the mindset aspect, it's just I think it's unique. And I've seen some other things out there, and I think that your academy is definitely unique and stands above the others because of those different elements and how they come together. So I
Yes.
definitely recommend it.
Thank you. So yeah, and just as you mentioned, ROI, it's a $2,500 investment, right? For a one-time payment for the entire 12 months for everything. Like we just like touched on some of the aspects of the program today. And you've gotten 28,920 in your business so far, and you're not even in the program a full year yet. Right. So like
Like
yeah.
7, 8 months. Yeah, exactly. And with another client just told me today they're interested. So
There
yeah.
you go. There you yeah, because this is not going to be your end number after 12 months. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, you definitely see the ROI in it. So I'm so glad that you reached out to me and then asked some questions and came in and you've just been, I really appreciate that you utilize the program as well. Like you come in, you said, okay, I don't need all the grant writing support right now. But what I do need is I need to look at those contract videos. I need to download the contract template, and then I need to come in and ask questions about it. And so you are finding what you need specifically and then going into those areas of the curriculum. So I do applaud you for, utilizing the program, like using it because you're going to
Yeah.
be successful if you use it, right? And
Right.
then figuring out. So good. So good, Alex. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. This has been so great to hear more about your business, get to know you more, and all the things. So I will see you back inside the academy. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you, Holly. Appreciate you.